Hello, it's Wednesday. It's the Happy Healthcare Professionals live show. I hope you guys are well this week. I am very, very excited about today's discussion. For those of you guys who don't know me, my name is Komal. I am a former national level pharmacist turned pharmacy career change coach. I'm also the founder of an organic supplement company called Amala Pure Health. And I'm a holistic pharmacist, and I'm really, really passionate about pharmacists creating their own career paths, really reinventing themselves, reinventing the wheel, so to speak. And our guest for today is no exception to that at all. If you are, wherever you're joining us from, say hello in the comments, do drop a hi. I'm coming to you from London. So wherever you are in the world, I know that there are lots of you guys who are joining us from different places all over the place. So do say hi in the comments and do leave us questions as well. But without further ado, I really wanted to introduce this amazing colleague of ours. I'm so really quite honored to have her on the show this week. This show is obviously all about inspiring you guys about creating your own career paths, and Nabila is just no exception to that whatsoever. She is a community pharmacist who has now become the global director of pharmacy at Babylon, and it is such a pleasure to have her here today and hear more about her story. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Nabila on screen.
Hi, Komal. It's lovely to meet you.
You too. It's so lovely to have you on the Happy
No, it's a
Healthcare
pleasure
Professionals.
to be here. No, thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure. So let's dive into your story, because I think people are going to, they'll really want to hear this. Tell us about your story. Tell us about you.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So I think most people know me from working at Babylon Health, obviously. So I have been at Babylon Health for around 5 years. So I started just under 5 years ago. I remember a time at Babylon Health when there were only about 50 or 60 employees, something like that. We were only present in one other country, so we were present in Rwanda as well as in the UK. We'd literally just started up in Rwanda. Our volumes were incredibly low. Obviously, we're quite famous for GP at hand. That didn't exist at the time. So that was only formed after I started. So I was fortunate enough to help form a lot of the operations and the concept behind GP at hand, which I'm, really grateful for that experience. But yeah, it was a completely different time. I've seen an immense change at the organization. So we're now at something like 2,500 employees. We span across a number of different countries. So obviously the UK, we were in Rwanda at the time that I started. We're now also in Canada, which I helped launch, in the States as well. We have some presence in the Middle East with our AI, and then also we have some really exciting services starting up in the Far East as well. So I've seen some real big changes, including like the formation of GP at hand, which has just been spectacular. We've gone from something like a couple of thousand NHS patients to well over 90,000. So we're currently the biggest NHS practice in the UK. So some real change there. And I was the only pharmacist at the time, obviously, when I started, the first pharmacist at Babylon. And now I think there is a team of somewhere between 50 and 60 people that I lead. Amazing guys with a big span of roles. I'm really excited to have our first meds management technicians actually starting in a couple of weeks. So that's really exciting stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely loads and loads of change. And kind of, I was really reflecting on kind of my journey, having kind of coming to speak to you today. I was thinking, well, what is it that made me, enabled me to kind of continue on this journey where maybe some people have left. I have outlived quite a number of colleagues who work for the organisation, and there's only a few of us around who were actually at the time 5 years ago. So obviously Ali is one of the people who's still here. My kind of manager at the time, the guy who recruited me, Mob, who's now the chief medical officer, is also still with us. And there's a couple of other people that are still with the organisation. I was thinking, well, what is the difference? Why am I still here, and why have other colleagues left, and actually other pharmacists also just kind of left? And it's really, I think, my reflective nature. So I'm incredibly reflective. So I will look at a situation, I will think about what has gone well, and also what hasn't gone well. So what can I change? What can I do better next time? And that's almost every interaction that I have on a daily basis. I'll think about, okay, so what has gone well here, and what do I need to do differently? That is the real thing that helps you to adapt and grow and change. And you cannot work in an environment with so much growth and so much change unless you are reflective and also open to feedback. So, I receive feedback, I provide feedback all the time. Unless I had a level of transparency in my kind of normal day-to-day work, I would not be able to work at the kind of level that I'm currently working. So I think they're kind of two really key things. I think the other thing, and I think we discussed this when we last spoke, Komal, is my ability to make decisions as well. So obviously I was the only pharmacist when I first started, and I was looked upon to make those decisions when I first started. And obviously I've been able to adapt due to my reflective nature, due to the growth, and really honed in on those skills to make independent decisions. And obviously when I was doing patient-facing work, they were independent clinical decisions, and now they're decisions that affect kind of potentially thousands of patients, or actually us globally. But it really just starts from being able to make independent clinical decisions. If you can't do those confidently, then it's unlikely that you'll be able to make the strategic decisions that you need to be able to make. Analyze the information that you have in front of you, and then be able to evaluate and make that decision in accordance with that. I find I really struggle with finding pharmacists that are independent in their clinical decision-making process. I think we're so used to being attached to someone. So we're so used to being attached to a GP or a nurse, even when we're prescribers, actually. Even when we're prescribers, we're still really so used to having that safety blanket of a GP or a nurse with us that actually we struggle. And we find that when someone starts with us, the first kind of 3 to 6 months of them working here is really them getting really used to making those independent clinical decisions. If you think about it, if you're a digital pharmacist, you're more or less going to be working from home on your own. There's no knocking on another door, checking your decision with a GP or a nurse. It is you making that decision and making an impact on that particular patient's care. So that's really, really, really important. I cannot stress that enough. It's crucial to be able to work independently. And I don't think it's a lack of knowledge. So I don't think it's a lack of clinical knowledge that kind of colleagues possess. I think it's really just a lack of confidence and potentially a lack of experience as well. And also just enabling themselves, so giving themselves permission to make that decision without the support of another healthcare professional. I think that us as pharmacists really struggle with that, because traditionally we're always associated with someone else. It's kind of ingrained in us from a very, 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 very early on in our training and our career that actually we need the doctor's permission to make this minor amendment on a prescription. You can't make a decision yourself. You have to do that through, and even if you do, the doctor can override it. So, what is the point in me honing in on those skills? And I think that working in a startup and working in such a small scale environment, it was just almost kind of, I was almost kind of thrown into the deep end and, you know, almost made to make those decisions. So it was kind of a sink or swim situation.
Yeah.
And me being very reflective and very adaptive to change meant that I was able to learn very quickly those skills of being able to make those independent decisions. So, you know, they may not have been something that I had previously honed, but I definitely kind of was swimming in that in that domain of you know, making some of those decisions. And I think to a certain extent as well, it was kind of, I was making the rule book because I was the first pharmacist there.
Yeah.
I was able to create, and that's really one of my biggest strengths is, you know, I'm not one to follow rules. I am one to kind of be quite creative and be able to you know, I want to be given free rein and autonomy over what I'm doing in order to create. And, you know, sometimes things go wrong and it's not a problem. You learn from it, you move on. But, you know, I think the ability, you need a safe space to be able to create stuff and do that without judgment, and also just be able to learn from it as well. And you know, being at Babylon really enabled me to be able to do that. So I'm incredibly grateful to have had that opportunity. But you know, I think they're the three kind of key things really. So being really reflective, being adaptive to change, and then also just being able to make those independent clinical decisions. And as you quite rightly pointed out, my background is kind of more or less an average pharmacist, to be honest. So I started off in hospitals. I qualified, did my pre-reg and stuff in hospital. I very quickly went on to the community because I wasn't able to kind of sit within the realms of the NHS. You know, I found it quite stifling to have to work within bureaucracy and red tape and that kind of stuff, and couldn't really adapt to that kind of environment very well, where I wasn't given that autonomy and creativity and could see problems and wasn't able to kind of fix them. So I very quickly went on to community, spent a number of years in community pharmacy, which also led me on to being an area manager. That led me then on to working as an inspector at the GPHC, which I did for a very short period of time. I very quickly realised that actually this is you know, probably the worst job for me because of the the rules and the you know, the sticking within the realms of the regulation, and my opinion being taken as the opinion of the regulator. You know, it's very important for me to be able to express myself and express my opinion. So I very quickly realised that actually it just really wasn't the job for me. I learned immensely in that job. It was really eye-opening, and actually probably a lot of my skills I learned from there actually. So refined there. But yeah, it really wasn't the job for me at all. I think the guys do a great job.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you're so honest with that experience, and I think that's so important as we go through our careers. You know, we are going to do jobs that we don't like, right? And we need to recognize those. We need to recognize them, and I think probably because of your reflective nature, you recognize that quickly, and you realized this isn't the right space for me. I'm going to have to do something else. So what led you to then applying for Babylon? Like, how did Babylon come about for you?
Babylon was really just me stumbling upon something. Absolutely, yeah. So I'm very up for opportunity. So even when I worked for the GPHC, I kind of applied for it and thought, I'm never going to get this job. You know, there's probably so many more better qualified people than I am, with realms of experience. You know, I wasn't qualified for very long at the time that I applied for that job. I didn't really have a background in regulation. I didn't really think you know, my regulatory stuff was very hot. But I thought, you know, what's the worst that could happen? You know, at the end of the day, I'll still be in the same position that I am now. and at best, I may get an interview, or I may even get offered it. So we'll see what happens, which is exactly what I did. And then that's kind of more or less the attitude that I adapted when I joined Babylon. So I'd left the GPHC. I was looking for something else. I knew that I didn't want to work for the NHS. I knew that I didn't want to especially work for the community. It wasn't kind of stretching enough for me. So I was looking for a different role. And I thought, okay, well, let's see what else there is out there. And kind of I was approached to work in this role because of my regulatory background initially. But that's kind of, even then, it was a very small part of my role. And I really, really quickly fell in love with it. So I think it's really just about knowing yourself. So where I've said that, I understood that actually this wasn't right for me for X, Y, or Z reason. I thought, well, actually, this is really good. I can more or less do what I want. I can actually create stuff here. So I can see that there's lots of opportunity here. Had lots of really open conversations with the guys that worked around me. Then it was a lot easier because there was far less people to influence and far less people to kind of help manage through that change. It was kind of, we'd think of an idea and we'd implement it the same day. That's the kind of level of pace that we were talking about. I'm still kind of more or less doing the same thing now. So I'm still looking for opportunities, looking at where pharmacists can be represented in the organisation, and influencing those key stakeholders, and ensuring that we get represented and we get that opportunity, which is why the team is still growing. Which is such a pleasure to see. It really is.
I can imagine, I think just having that opportunity to kind of, we talked about this when we spoke last time. The startup mentality is very different to any other environment that you've ever worked in. And, for you, I see you as like basically the very first digital pharmacist, because 5 years ago, digital pharmacy wasn't really a thing, right? And so you've essentially had to create this role out of nothing. Like, it didn't actually exist as a role, right?
Yeah.
And now, obviously, in this COVID world, everyone wants a digital pharmacy role, right? But at the time, what was that like? What was it like kind of being... What did you call yourself, actually?
I call myself a pharmacist. I guess it really helps to believe in a cause. So I truly believe in the mission of Babylon. So I truly believe in what we're trying to achieve. So we're trying to provide accessible and affordable healthcare. And, as soon as I found out about the company and the mission, and saw the colleagues around me, I instantly fell in love. Like, it wasn't just the fact that I could create, it was the fact that I truly believed in what I was selling, so to speak. And I think it's really important to be bought into what it is that you're doing. And if you're not, then it will either make you unhappy or people will be able to see it. So one of the two things will happen. And it's been tough. So it's I think a lot of people probably see the role that I'm doing at the moment, the level of success that we're experiencing, thinking, oh yeah, she's had it easy, she's it looks super easy, what Nabs has done. But we've had some really tough times, and I've had to have some really difficult conversations. So we were the first non-GPs to start consulting at Babylon. So we were kind of before any other healthcare professional, and that was because I identified that opportunity. I was like, we can do this. Trust us, we can do this. We can impact. And it wasn't just one conversation. I had to really persist because it was a big change in the service at the time. It was a change in our business model essentially. So I had to sit there and influence the business model that we were going to have going forward. And that's not an easy conversation to have, especially in a startup where someone is so bought into the fact that this is the care that we're providing and it's GPs that actually we've got a shortage of. Why do we need pharmacist consulting? No, it's true. Yeah, it's these are the kinds of conversations that I had to have. And it was something like 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, that actually we started to get the first consulting and truly digital pharmacists and the guys providing that kind of ongoing care. And at every stage, I'm looking for more opportunities for the guys to help develop them, to help give them more opportunity and to help showcase some of the skills that we have as pharmacists. But yeah, it definitely hasn't been an easy ride, and I've had to have some really difficult conversations. And with the level of pace of change, the workload is immense. It's, I think I spoke to you about it the last time we spoke. Sometimes my day will start at 7 a.m. because that's when kind of the Malaysian guys start to finish off their days, and actually we have calls in Canada and the States, and sometimes they don't end until kind of 8 or 9 o'clock at night. But if you don't kind of commit yourself to that cause, then you're not going to be able to influence that change. Your opinion won't be heard, your voice won't be heard in those environments. So you just kind of had to commit. I think that's actually one of the key things actually that helped in my development throughout the years. So I worked for Morrison's Pharmacy actually a number of years ago, and worked in a relatively new store and was just sitting there bored. Like, this store is really quiet. There's nothing here that's going to challenge me at all. I'm super bored. What should I do? So I really just put my hand up and said to the guys in head office, I am bored. If there's anything you want me to do, just tell me and I'll do it, because I'm just sitting here doing nothing anyway. And that kind of helped me on my kind of journey of providing and accepting feedback, I think, because I started helping out with things like policies, SOPs. You have to get opinions, different perspectives. You have to critically evaluate these things to ensure that there's no gaps or that you've covered everything basically. And you have to be able to accept feedback when you do that, and it's just you do it as a professional courtesy, and you have to be able to provide feedback in a professional way as well. So that definitely started me off on my journey. But I hear lots of pharmacists talking about not doing things for free. And I actually just did that off my own back. I was like, well, I'm literally sitting here bored. I'd like to do something. Give me something to do. And I could have said, well, I'm not going to do it unless you pay me X, Y, or Z amount more. But then I probably wouldn't have had the skills to be able to do the job that I'm doing today, or started off on that journey.
Such an important lesson. It's such an important lesson in terms of, you saying, I put my hands up. I said I was bored. I wanted to do something else. But the gain isn't, we always attach this kind of monetary gain to the task, but you've just demonstrated that the gain can often be far more in the long term than the short term requirement of I want more money for what I'm doing.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah, absolutely. And then and kind of on the kind of topic of money, I actually took a pay cut to be an inspector at the GPHC. So I was an area manager at the time. I was an area manager at the time. Everyone I knew thought I was crazy. They were like, what are you doing? Why are you taking a pay cut? It was a significant pay cut. It's like, this is going to be a good experience. Regardless of how long I stay here for, this is going to be really good for my development. So, even if in a year or 2 years time or whatever it is, I realize that actually this isn't a job for me, or I've learnt enough, or I can't sustain myself financially, then I can move on, and I will have 1 or 2 years or whatever it is worth of experience in this sector, which I assigned more value to than the finances and the monetary value there. And some people might say that you're underselling yourself or whatever it is, but actually money isn't really that important to me. And I guess it comes back to knowing yourself. So what is
Yeah,
important to you?
absolutely.
What are your values? What do you hold true to?
Totally.
And for me, my development was far more important, and still is far more important than the money that I receive in my paycheck at the end of every month. That is the stuff that drives me, basically. If I was sitting in a job that didn't challenge me, didn't develop me, I'd be incredibly bored, and probably wouldn't last very long. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's
We've all
definitely what
been
drives
there,
me. So
you
yeah,
know.
absolutely,
I think
yeah.
a lot of the, a lot of our colleagues who are watching today will say, I've been there, or I am there. I'm in that situation where I don't feel like I am being developed, or I'm trying really hard to be developed and it's
Mm,
just not happening, right? And I definitely, I 100% agree with you that you can't, in that situation, you actually do have to look internally and say, who am I? What do I stand for? What's important to me? And how can I start to get more of that? Right?
mm,
And where can I get more of that? You know,
yeah.
and you recognizing that for yourself. And, going back to what you were saying earlier about you really bought into the mission of Babylon. And that is such an important, that relationship between yourself and your work and you being on the same mission as your place of work. You could argue that's actually more important than anything else. Because once those two things are aligned, it's actually at that point that you don't really care about the money anymore
Mm,
because you're caring about the mission.
yeah. And actually, what you have in your day to day doesn't matter so much
No.
because you're working towards a common goal. So, actually, if you have to do something that maybe is a bit monotonous, or actually you think this should be done in a different way, or this bothers you or that bothers you, or whatever it is, it doesn't matter because you're looking for, you're working towards the same common goal. Um, that is incredibly important, and I completely agree. So knowing yourself is incredibly important, and that's not to knock that there will be some people out there who are motivated by money, and that's absolutely fine. That's their
Yeah.
thing. It's definitely not mine though. So it just depends. It's so important to just know yourself and know what it is that you want,
Yeah.
to be able to kind of travel on a trajectory that is the right trajectory for you. I mean, I've never been in a role for this long, quite honestly. So this is the longest I've ever been in a job, because I love the company, I love the mission, but also it allows me to develop in the way that I want to, and
Yeah.
I have to undergo a lot of change, and sometimes change is uncomfortable. So I go through through periods where things are difficult, because I'm going through a difficult change. But that's when I know, when I come out of that, I will have change significantly as a result of that change. And quite often people view that change aspect as quite negative,
Absolutely.
but actually I view it as a real positive, because I know that if I have that really uncomfortable feeling, that means that something good is waiting on the other side for me. I just have to keep pushing through, keep understanding that this is just the cycle of change. This is where I'm at in the cycle of change, and I will come out of it, and I will come out a better person because of it, a better pharmacist, and undergo whatever change it is that I need to, as
I
a
think
result
you've
of that.
touched on something so important there, which is perspective, right? Like every single time we're going through this change of, this place of fear, right? We've got to switch the narrative from this is horrible to what am I going to learn from this
Mm,
experience, right? What is this experience teaching me? And how is this experience actually growing me? Because we all know as human beings, we learn more from our failures than we do our successes,
mm,
right? We learn more from challenges and tragedies in our lives than we
absolutely.
do from the times when everything's going really well, right?
Mm,
And so, you might not see the learning at that point in time when you're experiencing it, but there absolutely 100% is a learning at the end.
Yeah, completely agree. I think so. I'm naturally quite a positive person, so I'll always gravitate towards the positive aspect of whatever it is that I'm doing. And if things do become more negative, I refocus the team almost. I'll say, well, what's the positive in this? Why are we thinking so negatively here? Whatever it is, and I will have that conversation about the change cycle with the guys numerous times, because sometimes you just need to be reminded of it. And I think we are such a unique organization. I think it's in any digital arena there will be lots of pace and lots of growth. So I think if that is the kind of career path that you want, you have to expect that things are going to go fast, and you have to expect change. If you don't, then it'll be a real shock to your system, really, I think.
And you can't sit in the fear of the change.
No.
You just got to get on with it, and you just got to push past and just keep going, right?
Yeah, but it's about looking at that goal. So what is your goal as a result of this change? Or what is your motivation for being here? So mine is the mission. So when I'm going through a difficult time like that, I'll think about the mission and think about, okay, so why am I here? I'm here for patients. So I might not be seeing patients every day anymore, but actually the team is, and I want them to be able to provide care in the way that they want to. And that's what motivates me to kind of push on, and persist through maybe that difficult time and find the positives there.
So there's a couple of questions in the comments, which, if you wouldn't mind, we'll try and go through. So
yeah, sure, go for it.
As a newly qualified IP, what advice would you give so that I can join a team at Babylon?
So I cannot stress enough independent clinical thinking. So independent clinical decisions. So to kind of reflect and critically evaluate where you're making those independent clinical decisions. If you have to go to a nurse or a doctor or sense check a decision with someone else, you are not making an independent clinical decision, just to make it really clear. So just work on that decision-making process. The more you do that, the more you'll be tapping into those skills that we're looking for at Babylon.
Yeah. And Manisha's asking, would love to know how the role of pharmacist has evolved while you've been at Babylon.
Oh gosh, so I was brought in. To look at the prescription process, to improve the regulatory aspect of the prescription process. So this wasn't even a clinical role at all. It was an operational role. So it was getting the prescription from A to B and making sure that it was legal. That was it. That was my remit when I first started. And now I oversee a team of people who consult, so provide chronic care management. We're all prescribers, obviously. Probably about a third of my time goes into line management at the moment because of the team. I have some regulatory input, although the team mostly do that on my behalf. So things like CQC, making sure that we're compliant with the various kind of regulatory aspects. And then part of it is tech. So we're really involved in any of the tech that touches the prescriptions process, any prescribing. So we kind of oversee anything from before the prescribing decision is made, the actual process of prescribing to getting the prescription to the patient. So we're involved in any of the tech, any of the operations, and that's globally. So that's not just in the UK, in Rwanda, Canada, the States, and will hopefully be in the Far East in the near future.
Amazing. I guess that tech, that relationship between pharmacist and tech is one that probably I can only imagine has taken quite a bit of adjustment.
Yeah, absolutely.
From my own experience of working working with tech and systems, that that always takes another level of understanding and skill, and I think a lot of it actually comes down to communication.
Yeah, I think also just understanding your stakeholders as well. So, you know, these are stakeholders for us because
Yeah.
actually they're helping me to provide better care for patients, and helping me to make systems safer. So I need to be able to convey whatever message it is that I want to in a way that they are able to comprehend. So it's just about ensuring that you understand your stakeholders, what perspective they're coming from, and just kind of have an open conversation within an open dialogue. You know, it took a bit of getting used to when I first started at Babylon because I'd never worked with software engineers before, product managers, that kind of stuff. Had no idea of the structure behind building tech. You know, I had no idea of the complexity. But yeah, I'm refining those skills further and further as I progress.
Yeah, absolutely. And the skills that are you know, really interesting to learn. I mean, I've certainly found that myself, you know, having worked at PSNC and then, you know, being involved in their, you know, bespoke auditing software. So I'm conscious of time. So I want to make sure that, you know, that we cover all the questions. Anissa, you've asked us about what would make you more confident in independent decision making, any courses that you would recommend. My advice to you is consistency is key. Do the work. You know, when you, I mean, I don't know if Nabila, you would agree with that, you know, get your hands, you know, get your feet wet in making those independent decisions. And that's when the confidence comes, right?
Yep, but also reflection. So reflection is really important. So thinking about those scenarios that make you uncomfortable, and reflecting on, so why did this scenario make me uncomfortable, or why did I have to go and get advice from that GP or nurse or whatever it is, and think about, okay, so what is it that I'm missing? Where are my gaps? Is it knowledge? Is it confidence? Is it experience? Is it something else? You can't underestimate the importance of reflection, I think, in that independent decision-making process.
Great advice. Thank you so much. I could carry on talking to you all evening, Nabila, because
likewise, Kamal, likewise. The feeling is mutual.
I hope that everyone watching has found this really useful. And if you've got any questions for Nabila, do pop them in the comments. Nabila, where can people find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn, so that's probably the easiest place to find me. Happy to kind of interact, etc. Send me a message, add me a request, etc. More than happy to interact on that medium.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. It's been so great talking to you. And,
it's
you
been
know,
a pleasure.
I hope you continue to have massive success at Babylon because, you know, it's doing such amazing work. And just thank you.
No problem. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you for everyone watching as well.
Absolutely. Thank you to everyone watching. Take care. Bye, Nabila.
Thank you. Bye.
That was Nabila. Thank you so much to everyone watching today. I hope that you enjoyed today's Happy Healthcare Professionals live show. If you have any suggestions as to people that you would like to see on this show, then don't hesitate to get in touch with me. Message me, let me know. I want to make sure that you get the most out of this show and that you get to learn about all the different roles that we can hold, not just as pharmacists, but as healthcare professionals. And that's what I want to be able to inspire you with and motivate you with. So please do share. And I shall see you live again next week here, 8 o'clock. I'm going to have an amazing couple actually next week. I've got Anisha Patel, who is the podcast host for Pharmacist Diaries, along with her husband, who is actually a health coach. And I think next week's discussion is going to be really interesting because we're going to be talking about health and well-being and what does that mean to us as healthcare professionals. So I really hope you can join me again next week at 8 o'clock and enjoy the rest of your week all. And I will see you all very soon. Take care.